I'm a shareholder, physician, orthopedic surgeon practicing hand upper extremity microvascular surgery, specifically in hand and upper extremity surgery.
Did Mr. Depp's finger injury happen as a result of a vodka bottle being thrown at him?
No.
Objection leading.
Overruled.
I'm sorry.
No.
And what is the basis for that opinion?
Well, the medical data is inconclusive. It's not consistent with what we see in the described injury pattern or in the clinical photographs. And there are several elements. There's the description was of the hand being flat on a bar and the bottle crushing the finger from the top. But looking at the images, there's really no significant injury to the dorsum of the finger, and to create the type of injury with that type of a crush injury, we would anticipate both injury to the fingernail and other parts of the finger.
Can I stop you there and
Sure.
just break down a few things? You said the hand resting flat on the bar. Can you show the jury what direction the hand was resting based on the documents you've reviewed?
I think that the demonstration was with the hand flat, like this, across and maybe even curled over the edge of the bar like this.
Which side was facing upward? Which side of the hand?
The back of the hand, or we call it the dorsal surface of the hand, was up.
Doctor, if you could get closer to the microphone,
Oh,
I'd just appreciate
sorry.
it. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you referred to the back of the hand as the dorsal side of the hand, is that
That's
right?
correct.
Sort of like the dorsal fin on a shark?
Correct.
Fair. And what is the other side of the hand called?
The palmar surface.
Palmar? Okay. So what direction was Mr. Depp's hand resting on the bar?
So the dorsal side was up, which with the descripted mechanism of injury or the injury, the bottle would have struck the top of the finger at the fingernail.
Okay. And you also mentioned a term that I'd like you to explain to the jury, crush injury, please.
So with review of the images and the x-rays, I mean, this was a crush injury. That would generate the findings clinically on x-ray that we saw. The fracture is a we call it comminuted, and the tip of the finger is in multiple splinters, so there are multiple fragments, and typically you see that with a crush type injury. But that was the way the injury was described and demonstrated in the videos, and so in that position where the bottle to strike the finger the way it was described, it would have struck on the nail, and the nail was really not injured, and so that's not consistent with that pattern of injury. And you can see that the tuft or the tip of the finger, the last bone in the finger called the distal phalanx, is shattered. You can see there's multiple little spicules of bone, and there's also a transverse fracture at that level, which runs through the bone. So this is what we would describe as a comminuted fracture, and it's commonly associated with crush injury.
A bottle had exploded near his finger in the way that he alleges. What would you expect to see in the documents that you have reviewed?
Well, I think that the physicians did a good job of documenting the presentation, the appearance of the wound. They did not document the presence of any glass shards, and there were no other associated injuries elsewhere on the hand.
Dr. Moore, does Mr. Depp's description of how his finger became injured line up with the facts that you've seen?
No.
And you testified that Mr. Depp demonstrated that his hand was flat on a surface. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's not entirely accurate, is it, though?
No. His description was relatively consistent in both, including turning and resting the hand on the edge.
Isn't it true, Dr. Moore, that when Mr. Depp did the demonstration in his deposition, he showed that his fingers were hanging over the bar?
Well, even hanging over the bar, it still leaves the dorsum of the hand or the nail vulnerable.
That's not my question, Dr. Moore. My question is, isn't it true that Mr. Depp said his fingers were not laying flat on a table, they were hanging over the bar?
Yes.
Okay. And And in fact, you knew that when you made that opinion. Isn't that correct?
Well, I believe that as I demonstrated sitting here, that I said that he had said they were slightly curled over, I think was the description that I gave.
Your description in this courtroom was that it was laying flat, and I think you've done that now twice. But in your deposition, you testified that his fingers were actually hanging over the bar. Isn't that correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Misstates the witness's testimony. He clearly indicated they were curled. Or could have been curled.
Overruled.
So that's a distinction that perhaps I misstated in one of the two descriptions. However, that does not substantially change my opinion of the impact it would have on the mechanism.
Isn't it true that Mr. Depp also testified that the bottle came from an off angle?
Yes.
Okay. And you consider that in rendering your opinions today, correct?
Yes, I believe he stated that it came from between 6 and 10 feet. I think it was I think he demonstrated it was off to his right. I can't recall specifically, but it was off angle, yes.
Okay. So it didn't come from the top, as you previously testified just a few minutes ago, correct?
Well, no, it would have struck the top of the finger, but it may have been slightly off angle in its approach based on the description.
Mr. Depp described it as off angle, correct?
Correct.
Dr. Moore, just at the outset, your billing rate for providing deposition testimony is $1,000 per hour?
That's correct.
All right. And you were deposed in this action for several hours on March 22nd, 2022?
That's correct.
And your billing rate for providing trial testimony is $5,000 per day?
That's correct.
You were retained in this case by Ms. Hurd's legal team, correct?
Correct.
And over the last few years, you've provided expert services for one of Ms. Hurd's law firms on at least 2 other cases, right?
That's correct, yes.
Dr. Moore, is it fair to say that you have no personal knowledge as to how Mr. Depp injured his finger in Australia, correct?
No, I have no personal knowledge. My impression is based on his description of the injury and the available medical records for review.
You cannot determine what particular object caused the injury to his finger, yes?
Well, I can't determine exactly what object did it.
My question is just very specific. You can't determine the object that caused the injury to Mr. Depp's finger.
Well, it's a little bit more of a non-specific answer. I mean, I can't determine the exact object, but I can determine that it's unlikely that it was sustained in the manner described.
A bottle is a foreign object, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So you can't rule out that the injury to Mr. Depp's finger was caused by a vodka bottle, correct?
Well, based on the injury pattern, I can say that the described mechanism of injury is inconsistent with medical findings.
Right. But because a vodka bottle is a foreign object, you can't rule out that a vodka bottle is what caused Mr. Depp's injury.
Well, I can't rule out that a vodka bottle caused the injury, but I can rule out that it was caused in the manner described in his testimony. This is about the fingers.
I understand that. But my question is,
I think it's important that they understand that.
this is the time for me to ask you questions. Your counsel will have the ability to rehabilitate you and ask you questions on redirect. Right now, let's try my question.
Okay.
You can't definitively say what caused the injury to Mr. Depp's fingers, yes or no?
No.